So on the 1st of December, there's going to be a Natalist Conference in Austin, Texas. And I'm making this video basically just to go over their website, what's going to be happening at the conference, the people that are going to be attending. And the reason I wanted to make this video is for two main reasons. The first reason is that I think as antinatalists, we're becoming more aware of this narrative that is rising up in general, but particularly on the conservative end of the spectrum in the West, about a crisis in birth rates. Basically, that birth rates in many countries around the world are going back down towards replacement level and below replacement level. Now, I've already done a live stream reacting to the Birth Gap documentary, which talks about this issue. So I'm not going to revisit all the points that are made in that documentary in my response to it. But this is a growing narrative that's becoming more and more popular. And I think as antinatalists, the people driving the concern around this are people that we are going to have to interact with in maybe a significant way in the future. As antinatalists start to become more public and start to talk about the philosophy more, these are people that are going to start to question us. So I think it's good to keep tabs on the sorts of things they're doing and the sorts of people that are involved in this. The second thing I've kind of already referenced is actually the specific individuals. So I think it's good to understand the specific people who are concerned with this issue, because those are the people that we may actually be directly interacting with in the future. So I think it's good to look at conferences like this and see who is attending, what sort of subjects are being spoken about, and that sort of stuff. So I don't really think there's anything else to go over before we look at the website, so let's jump in. So this is the website. It's called the Natal Conference, and like I said before, it's happening on December the 1st this year in Austin, Texas. So they've got information here on the speakers at the conference, the agenda, and the workshops that are going to be going on. Now, the general tagline for the conference is, "We're living through the greatest population bust in human history. The future belongs to those who show up." So I think the first thing to look at is the general information on the conference and how they frame it. So let's go down to this general information they've got. So as I said before, this conference is built around this narrative of birth rates declining, falling below replacement level, and the consequences of that. So in this general information, you've got a brief bit about the issue. You've got a brief bit about how a lot of policies and technologies have actually been brought about to try and help birth rates increase, but they haven't really worked in many places. And so this sets up the issue and sets up the fact that it's a persistent issue and why the conference is needed, right? So they're framing the conference as people coming together, as they say here, we're gathering the brightest minds in the world in search of new solutions, basically pulling people together to come up with resolutions to this issue of birth rates going below replacement level. So the basic structure is that in day one, it's public. There will be live stream symposium discussing various perspectives on the problem, and it will be touching on environmental, physiological, social, and cultural aspects of it. Then the second day is closed door. So you have to have a specific ticket to get access to day two, which is when they will have facilitated private workshops where they'll have experts. I don't know what sort of experts there'll be, whether they will be reproductive technology experts or demographers, or maybe they'll have a range of people on a range of topics. And that'll be focused around developing solutions to this problem. So now we know about the framing and their sort of reasons for putting the conference on and a bit of a basic breakdown of the structure of the conference. Let's look at who's actually speaking at it. Looking at some of the speakers, so you've got people like Malcolm and Simone Collins. So again, I've also done a live stream reacting to one of their videos. So they are a pro-natalist couple, and they've had quite a few media appearances, I think, on this. And I think they personally plan to have quite a few children to, as they put it, sort of play their part in helping the birth crisis, as they put it. Anyway, out of the other speakers, there's not really anyone I would draw particular note to. None of their names sort of stand out to me, or I know about them, but maybe some of you will. The only person I thought was maybe a bit funny was this person called Raw Egg Nationalist at BabyGravy9. Look, you can choose your own online personality, but to me it seems like a bit of an odd one and a bit of an odd invite to a conference, presumably as they're trying to have a sort of professional look as they're trying to deal with a really serious issue as they see it. But hey, look, I'm not the one organizing the conference, and maybe this person does have a very informed and nuanced view on population ethics and the ethics of reproduction, maybe. Anyway, so next we can go on to a bit more about the agenda. So the day one agenda, they're going to have a meet and greet, then there's a keynote speaker, then there's a dinner, another keynote speaker, and an after party. Now, none of these are hyperlinked, so there's no more information to get about who specifically are the keynote speakers. We know who the speakers are, but we don't know who the keynote speakers are. So that's day one. Day two, which as we saw before is the more sort of exclusive day. So day two is all about workshops. For day two, they've got a closed closed door session where they say that you will be surrounded by people who are the leading minds working on this problem. So that'd be interesting to see who they've actually got. I don't know if we will find out after the fact who these apparently leading minds on the issue are. It would be interesting to see. They've then also got a creative lab where they are bringing people together to specifically focus on making solutions and starting up projects, which seems quite interesting. It would be really interesting to have a antinatalist version of this. And there is an antinatalist conference coming up actually around the same time as this one, which is going to be excited. It's not going to have workshops like this maybe in the future, but I will add a bit more information about the conference at the end of this video if anyone watching hasn't heard about it, so stick to the end. And then the final thing they've got on day 2 is a strategies for the future. So this is about coming up for strategies on how to get birth rates up. Not too much information on this. This is part of the more exclusive day, so I think someone like me just going to the website won't be able to find all of the information that I want, but that's an overview anyway. So now the last thing to do is just quickly look at tickets. I did have a look before and I just wanted to let people know what is it like trying to get tickets for this conference. So to get a regular ticket just for day 1, the cost is $500, which is quite expensive. So I would imagine a lot of the people going to this conference are not going to be lay people interested in this issue. I think this is probably going to be a lot of sort of influencer type people, a lot of people who are quite well connected, all of this sort of stuff, because you've got to pay $500 for the ticket and you've got to travel to that place and book hotels and all of that sort of stuff. So I think you've got to be relatively well off to attend a conference like this. And then the other ticket you can get, which is the VIP one, which is for day 1 and 2, that one costs $1,000. Anyway, so those are all the details I could find about this Natalism conference. I think it's quite an interesting concept. I think it would be good to have an antinatalist version of this, which brings me on to the Antinatalist Advocacy Conference, which is happening around the same time. So the Antinatalist Advocacy Conference is an online conference. It's free. Anyone can join it from anywhere in the world. It's over 2 days on the 2nd and 3rd of December. And we've already started to release the speaker announcements for the conference, so you can see who's speaking at the conference. If you want to find out more information, I will leave the links in the description below. You can follow us on X, you can follow us on YouTube, join our newsletter, and you can find information on our website as well. But I think the AAC 23 conference is going to be really exciting. It's going to be really interesting. Unfortunately, one thing that the Natalism conference has that we don't have is that it's going to have in-person workshops and discussions and stuff like that, which I think are really valuable. One of the benefits of having the Antinatalist conference online is that more people from all around the world can access it, and it doesn't necessarily have to be ticketed, whereas an in-person one has more costs. So generally it will need to be ticketed unless you can find a private sponsor, and that's an advantage to have an online one that's more accessible. But a disadvantage is that you don't have the in-person element, and an in-person element is really good for coming up with ideas and developing projects. But anyway, let me know if you have any thoughts on the Natalism conference, if you know about any of the people who are listed as speaking at it, what your thoughts on that conference are. So drop a comment below and I will see you in the next one.